Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, I have fellow Canadian, in fact, just down the road from me, down in Calgary, Alberta, Alex Orasuk. Alex, how are you today?
I'm great, Matt. Thanks for having me. It's going to be a nice chat today. I know we both have
Yeah,
some like fired up energy, so I'm ready to go
definitely.
today.
Definitely, I'm picking up on that as well. You know, it's kind of funny. You can pick up on somebody's energy to a degree, even through like DMs on Instagram, can't you? Yeah.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
away. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And just say, yeah, as soon as we were kind of riffing on, like, dude, I not blowing smoke just because you're on the show. Like, I really love what you're doing with your Instagram account, and of course, we're gonna get into that. So then I compelled to reach out to you, and then we just had a really
yeah,
good back and forth. Realized, small world, we're very close in proximity, both Canadian boys.
yep.
So yeah, dude, lots of similarities. We had a little bit of a preamble before we got started. Yeah, lots to talk about, man. But let's get right into your Instagram account. What is unique about it? You can explain it a lot better than I can as far as the origin of it and all that. But the floor is yours. Tell us about what you got going on.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. So, it's kind of an interesting story. I don't know if you want me to start with kind of how it began, but
Yeah,
I'll naturally just go there. But
totally, man. Do it.
I started in February. I started dry February. I just kind of took an initiative, which I've been doing in the past, to raise funds for the Canadian Cancer Society.
Right.
And whenever I started, I was kind of like, oh, I've had success in the past with fundraising, but it was so hard to like, there's only so many times you can ask people to donate year after year. And I was like, I have to like do something that has value or people find interesting. That's the only way I can do it. So immediately I was like, okay, I'm giving up beer and that's my favorite. So I'm just going to go right into non-alcs. Like I'm going to dive deep in. So I decided kind of spur of the moment. I was like, okay, I'm going to review a non-alcoholic beer, try to every day in the month of February. And then just post about them and rate them on a scale of 1 to 10 or what I think is good versus not my favorite.
Mm,
And then it like started from there. So now it's evolved like over 3 months almost now of so many different varieties of different brews that are on all non-alcoholic, which is so cool because no one ever thought, first of all, that I would be doing what I'm doing, but second,
yeah.
like people don't think about non-alcoholic beers, right? So
Mm.
it's just an interesting standpoint to have, like, oh, this guy's just a non-alcoholic beer guy. Like that doesn't exist right now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And yeah, I totally agree. And us in like a Canadian culture, I view it as kind of mirrors like European culture where like drinking, especially beer drinking, is like sort of almost like a stereotype of Canadians, especially
Yeah.
Canadian men. So yeah,
Yep.
it's really cool that you can just take a little bit of a side step out of that and still having the beer, but like you say, the non-alcoholic side of it. So yeah, very cool, man. There's so
Yeah.
much to get into as far as like, the changes with yourself with the potential like health and all that. I wanted to start
Yep.
with the beers though. I didn't know there was that many. And a quick little story for you. When I first sobered up the first time, it was 2012 for 3 years. And I tell you, dude, the first time I'd go in looking for those non-alcoholic beers, they'd be kind of like down on the bottom shelf. You had like Molson Excel and
Yep.
and O'Doul's, and that's literally it. You know what I mean? And like now you'll go into any grocery store, there's at least 8 linear feet, sometimes like 12 linear feet of like
Yep.
wines, beers, like the pre-mixed, highballs and such. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. But like I'm surprised that you're able to find 90 non-alcoholic beers. Like, how do you, I guess, what kind of outreach are you doing on these? Are you like reaching out, getting them in the mail? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. So
Yeah.
shamelessly, the biggest thing I can do actually is plug a non-alcoholic beer shop. They do other alcoholic beers. They have a bunch of products. They're a shop in Calgary called The Collective. And basically when I started, I'd gone to The Collective all the time to get regular beers, and I knew they had a non-alcoholic section, but they have a whole fridge dedicated to non-alcs. Just like the coolest. So it's
So
kind of
cool.
started there, right? Of like, okay, well, what can I try? And they were all super supportive. Andrew, who's one of the owners, and Stacy, but Andrew kind of he had some, and he was like, oh, you should try this first. But then the biggest story, and you can see my little bag, I guess, my carry bag, but
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
from PEI originally, and Libra
Yeah.
is a massive non-alcoholic company. They started that, I can't even tell you how many years ago, but so
Hmm.
I reached out to them right away, and they sent me, I think it was like 35 or 6 of them in the mail, like
Wow.
right away.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, right. It's pretty
That
crazy.
helps you get. I mean, there's only 28 days in February, so that got you covered for all of February and a bit first week of March there, just from those guys. So
Yeah.
yeah, very cool. Very cool. What just start with some of the softball questions. What are your like favorites that you've had?
So yeah, that's a really good question, and it's so interesting because they're all super different, like how
Yeah.
they're made or like the flavor. My top pick, I've always said that I'm biased because of the PEI connection,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Libra makes a stout, and it is like wow. Like I've
Yeah.
given it to people who still drink, and there's a couple of people from my work who buy it now regularly just because the
Really?
flavor is so good.
Wow.
But it's my top one. Phillips out of BC, the Iota
Yeah.
series,
Yeah.
they are just like crushing it.
Yeah.
With some stuff they've got. They had a taster. If you at the collective, they gave me actually. It's not on the market yet, but it was like a blackberry lemon ale, and
Ooh, that
oh man,
sounds
it's
amazing.
like I
Yeah.
messaged them right away. I was like, when this comes out, it's going to spread like wildfire because
Yes.
it was the best. So those two are pretty much favorites of mine. The Sour series out of Quebec.
Oh yeah.
They're super good. They have it's like a tropical, not a cider, but a tropical lager of sorts, and it's super good. But yeah, there's so many too. Like it's as many as you think that there are regular options. There is
Yeah.
almost equal now of
Wow.
non-alcoholic options. It's incredible. Yeah.
That is incredible. Yeah. It's such a growing market. There's a lot of people, the terms right now, sober curious
Yeah.
and so forth. So it's really great to see that's we're getting that support for with the non-alcs as well. Man, I didn't realize it was quite like I knew obviously that we had increased substantially, but I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was to like almost 1-to-1 as far as a dude, because like there's so many that I thought I was, giving something up. Like I love the
Yeah.
sours. I'm like, well, I guess it's the end of that. But now you're telling me no. So now I'm
Yep.
quite. You piqued my interest now. I'm gonna start
Yeah.
looking some of
Right.
these up. Yeah, absolutely.
And
And the
what's
Phil,
the
yeah,
sorry, what's the best is you can get them shipped from across the country or anywhere because
yeah,
there's no alcohol in them. So
right. Good point.
you
Yeah,
can gift them from wherever you want. It's the best.
very. Yeah, yeah. How about the shipping though? Like shipping charges, they got to be expensive for these things. Pretty heavy, right?
Sometimes yes, but sometimes you're kind of like, yeah, if you I would say go to a local spot near you. I mean, a
Sure,
lot of
sure.
stores are waking up to the fact that people
Yes.
do want the option and they're carrying it.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do. But like for me, like I love Libra's product. It's awesome. So like I'm willing to pay, yeah, the extra to have it out here if I can't
Totally.
find the exact one. But it's worth it in the end to me. So
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it comes down to, right? So
yeah.
I love the Philip, like, because there was definitely a Phillips. I can't remember which one it was. It was like a peach wheat ale or something that I loved in my drinking days. So
Yep.
I'm definitely gonna look that one up. What do you say it was a blackberry lemonade?
Yeah, it's not. I don't think
Oh,
it's out yet, but they have. If you
okay.
write down the Iota series, that
Iota, yeah,
whole series is stellar. They actually,
yeah,
they sent me product in the mail,
yeah,
because I was doing some photo work of their stuff and I
yeah.
liked it and I couldn't try them all, and so they sent them to me and like, yeah, they even like their Pilsner is good. All
Nice.
the basic stuff, the stuff that you say like you would go to the grocery store that doesn't taste good at all.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
like, oh my God, like wow, this is
yeah.
actually viable now. Like I can have.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then I don't the time of recording here, like Partake is the latest one that you had, the pale.
Yeah.
That was honestly, they were the first non-alc beer that I remember Googling a couple summers ago, maybe it was even 3 or 4 summers ago. Yeah, because it was like right around when I was first starting my 4 year, 4 year sober streak that I'm on now. And I remember Googling craft beer, like non-alcoholic.
Yeah.
And they are the who came up. And dude, it was so close. Like it's got a little bit of like the hopsy sort of feel to it and
Yeah.
aftertaste, and even the way it pours and all that. I was like, hell yeah, this is what I needed. I just needed something beyond like and nothing against, like I like the Heineken zeros and stuff too, but like I
Yeah.
just needed something a little bit different, So yeah, I noticed that you have the Partake in there as your latest one. Yeah, it's fun, man. It's really cool. You're doing something that's like very unique. And like
Yeah.
you're saying, you got like a good set. You're combining like your previous, and we'll get into it, your previous knowledge of photography and some of the other things that you've done. And yeah, man, like I'm looking at your Instagram account right now, and you got over 2,000 followers. You know what I mean? So obviously it's picking up
Yeah.
steam. Are you getting a lot of people reaching out to you for just advice on what beers, or even advice about like, hey, how did you get off like the beer? Like
Yeah.
what kind of people are reaching out to you?
That's a good question. So there is a mix of both. And I will say, like, the coolest thing that has happened to me since kind of deciding that this is a movement that I want to be part of and this is something I want to do is I was tagged in a Facebook group randomly by someone I don't know, who someone was asking for health reasons they couldn't have beer anymore. And they were like, this is a part of my life and now I feel like I've lost this. And
Yeah.
so they were like, what do? I don't even know where to begin. And someone tagged me being like, I reach out to this guy, and like I just commented on the post like this is where I would go right away. Like they were in Calgary, so hopefully they, maybe they took that option, but that was kind of the first step in me realizing like, oh wow, this is a little bit impactful, right? Like you can actually help someone find an alternative that suits their lifestyle, which is incredibly important.
That's so cool, right? It was just like something a little bit unexpected, but now I'm sure there's a light bulb in your head going, okay, like I can actually do a little bit more than what I initially set out to do with this.
Yeah. Yeah. Big time. I didn't like, in being honest, like this wasn't something that came to me until almost the end of February. Like I was given during the month of February, they give you these things called the golden ticket, which is like you can drink for a day if someone donates X amount of dollars. And this February, we raised over $2,200, which was the most I've ever raised ever. And I said to my girlfriend at the time, I said, you know what? I don't want the golden ticket. I was like, I want to take this as far as I can because it's a challenge. And it wasn't until the end that people started asking me, how excited are you to drink again? How excited are you? What's your first beer going to be? Are you going to have scotch, whiskey? Like, but the biggest one was like, how excited are you to get just plastered again?
Right.
And that's when it literally clicked with me. What I refer to now, and I've said before, is like this, like alcohol is the only thing we truly like people brag about. But I was like, if I showed up to your doorstep, and this is an extreme example, but with a bag of cocaine saying it's the newest variety and it's made by this person and it's infused with this and it tastes so much better, it's like I wouldn't do it. But everyone else was so interested with me getting back on the booze that I was like, I don't want to be back on the booze. Like I'm just not doing that right now. So yeah, it was a shock to a lot of people. It was crazy.
Yeah, interesting. How have those same people been with it now? Like has the shock worn off and they're sort of okay, this is what he's doing, or you still get a few shots every now and then as far as like, hey man, like why are you still doing that? Like what is a mixed reaction? Like what's going on?
I think it's a little bit of a mixed reaction. Like, I mean, if you were to ask friends and family of mine, like I was a partier at one point in my life, just like everybody in their 20s, like growing up, like that was just a part of me. And from Canadian men drink a lot, but East Coast Canadian men drink a substantial amount. Like it was nuts. And so, there were a lot of people that were like, oh, like there were even shocked within my family that I just quit. Like it was cold turkey within not even a discussion. I just was like, nope, I'm done. And so, so now like I still have people that are like, oh, like, how's it going? Or they're still like, wow, you still haven't, eh? And I'm like, no, I'm like, but they follow along on the Instagram now. So they're kind of
very
all in.
Cool. Okay. That was going to be my next question. Are they kind of keeping their eye on you though too? They're following you as well. So that's great to hear. Yeah, let's get into, you mentioned the magic word there. I wanted to get into it. Health. What have you found has changed, if anything, about like your health, mental, physical, energy, all the above?
Yeah, it's weird. In one of my videos I did on Instagram when I first started doing dry Feb, and I was just doing the daily updates, I think I said in one of them, all right, I'll tell you guys like in 28 days or whatever how my skin's doing or like all this stuff. And I kind of laughed because I was like, I don't foresee any change happening. Like, but it's so night and day different. Like for me, it's an incredible shift. And you could ask, like I'm way less anxious now than I ever previously was. I would say I'm way more methodical, or I'm way more like the same thing as meditating. Like my mind is way more calm than it
Gotcha.
had ever been before.
Yeah.
And a lot of things like I find, and this might just be me in the time of life, and then having all these things happen, but like now I find that I'm more grateful for a lot of things. I find I have more
Mm-hmm.
clarity. I find I have
Yeah.
more focus. My sleep is the biggest thing. Like I've been telling people at work that they come in and they're like, I have shitty sleeps. And I'm like, you need to get off the booze for 3 to 4 months. Cause
Yeah.
I'm at the 3-month mark now. And
Yeah.
like I sleep way better than I ever have
Yeah.
before. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's actually a big, like a stat I'd read. I think it was 50% of people that consume alcohol have some, on the spectrum of like insomnia of some form, which
Yeah.
totally makes sense, right? Like, man, yeah, like my sleep, same thing. Like, I think, and congratulations, by the way, 3 months is
Thank you.
amazing. That's rad. My sleep initially, like that's what my body craved. Like the first couple months of just drying out, I would just like have naps and I'd like sleep for
Yeah.
like 9 or 10 hours. I felt like a teenager, when you sleep until like 11 a.m. or
Yeah.
whatever. It's like, oh shit. But that's what I needed, right? Because I was basically just blacking out, or, you know what I mean? Like maybe catching a couple of shitty hours of sleep and then waking up, grabbing my coffee and going about my day. Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, super cool, dude. I want to get into a little bit of your backstory. Before we do though, you started a podcast, and I want to give you the platform to talk about that and what you got going on with that one.
Yeah, well, you know what? I really appreciate you letting me do that, first of all. But yeah, it's been super exciting to launch this podcast. This podcast is called Sub Zero. I thought the name was so clever when I came up with it, because I was like, how can I create something that it works in multiple facets? And I thought, oh,
Yeah.
Sub Zero, like in Canada, it's below zero, so people might
Cool.
think, oh, it's a Canadian guy. But then Sub Zero, like I'm taking out a 5 or 10 and I'm putting a 0 in there for 0% alcohol. So
Yes.
the whole concept was I want to document, my journey and what, is happening and unfolding, and the things that I see, or things in my health, or just everyday life, or the people I meet, the experiences I share, which again, like I've talked, I look forward to having you on there one day.
Yeah, man.
But the biggest other part is these beers. Like there's such a story to share about the Sub-Zero or the 0% community rather, and the people behind them that probably have incredibly interesting stories, and how it's evolving. Like we're in a place now where Health Canada is saying to everyone, like, no amount of alcohol is safe, and now we're at a point where we've had the most non-alcoholic probably beverages available to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And young Canadians especially, and young people alike around the world, are taking a step forward and saying, well, we want these options more than the others. So it's going to be a cool place to document like just that evolution, I guess, of that scene.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most interesting parts to me is the fact that you were so far on the other side of it, right? It's like, the pendulum swing, and like you were mentioning, even in the context of your family and friends going like, wow, like you stopped, and like you mentioned the culture that you grew up in. And so, I mean, that in itself is like quite an interesting story, isn't it?
Yeah, it is crazy. Like I think about it often, and I've shared before, like when I made that decision to say, nope, I'm not drinking, I hit immediately a lot of firsts that kind of shocked me. Right away, I know you're wearing your Oilers shirt, but
yes, sir.
I'm technically a Habs fan growing up, but my second favorite was the Flames, and now I live in Calgary, so yada yada. But
yeah,
I went to the Saddle Dome shortly after I gave up booze, and I was flabbergasted because I sat there next to my girlfriend in the same seats that we usually tried to get. I said, I've never been here and not drank. I've never stepped foot in this building and not consumed alcohol. And then after that, St. Patrick's Day came around, which is a huge thing out east. And I, for the first time, had no booze. I was like blown away by like how these small things to me before meant I have to have a beer because it's just what I do. It was nuts. Yeah.
Totally, man. I love that you have that like curiosity or that awareness enough to go, you know what, like there's something to this, right? And I'm curious, you mentioned a little bit about, why, not necessarily why you stopped, but like when you stopped, some of the reactions you got. And I'm wondering if there was more to the why, because you mentioned, okay, it was pretty off-putting for you to have these people go like, hey, so when are you going to start getting like, what's your first beer and all that? And it kind of made you like, let's just unpack that a little bit more. Like what else went into your firming up of your decision? Like, no, I think I'm going to keep going this route of 0% beers.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say it's in honesty, it's probably two parts. The first part is I kind of have always tried, and people would know I try to go against the grain a little bit. I try to kind of make my own little, hence the take a hike shirt. Just try to make a little switch here and there. But I did two things this year, and one came before getting off of booze. The first one was when January came around. The first January, I shaved my head. It's all came back now. But the second thing was after February and all this, I was like, I needed a challenge. I was like, this is something that's incredibly healthy for me. I'm in my 20s. I was like, this is something that's healthy, something that no one else in their 20s is really thinking about. Like there are other people out there that are just, like me and are trying and are doing the same thing, but it's not common. And I just said, you know what, like I would like to challenge myself to do this and see what becomes of it. And it was mostly the curiosity, like you mentioned. I was so curious at the point, like I had discovered other people on social media like yourself or anyone else that I came across that were on this in the sober curious movement. But I was like, what could happen to me? Like what could happen in 1 year? What are the benefits that I will see? And I was like, I don't know, but if I don't do it now, I probably never will. So I'm just going to do it. And then I just was like, okay, we're doing it.
Hell yeah. I like that, man. Yeah. It's so cool. It reminds me a bit of like, I mean, I love how you do have it documented on Instagram and all that, but it has this feel of like, what was that one dude that was always doing like the McDonald's documentaries and all that? Morgan.
Yeah.
It has a little bit of a feel of that, you know what I mean? Like, but with your own complete, like unique and twist on it and all that. But yeah, I like that. The whole, like, let's do it for a year. Let's document it. Let's see what's going on. I like the collaborations with the breweries and stuff. And like, yeah, like you say, like just in your age group too, there's a lot of people that just straight up aren't drinking, but the fact that like at your age that you're just like pausing it indefinitely, it's pretty inspiring, man. So like, I want to, commend you for that. I admire you, for doing that. So
appreciate it. Yeah. The next biggest thing is, I'm hopeful. I think just like most people, I think everyone wants to help each other in every way possible. It's kind of a human thing that we share, but I'm just hopeful. Like I feel like there's other people that are, that could be struggling. I have a history of addiction within my family. But to be able to kind of be someone who has always been known to be on the other side of the fence and make that change. I'm hoping that, I can help in any way that I can, or inspire someone else to say, oh, maybe, this is something that I could try. And like I've already said, the benefits that I've seen already, and a lot of people would attest to are awesome. So.
Well, the fact is that people are reaching out to you and tagging you as like, essentially like an authority figure, you know what I mean? Or like at least somebody that can speak from your own experience. If nothing else, hey, I'm a few kilometers up the road from you. This is my experience with it. Do with that information what you care to do, right? So, which is amazing. Yeah. Awesome, dude. Let's I want to get into a little bit more of your personal story. Like we were talking before we got started here. You've been across Canada 3 times. You talk about being out of the East Coast. You've been obviously to the West Coast, all points in between.
Yeah.
Let's get a little bit into like, your upbringing. You've dropped a few hints of as far as like, the upbringing that you had, perhaps being a little like party centric and all that. But by all means, like in your own words, what was like your upbringing like, and what was some of these adventures you've been like, going across Canada? I'd love to hear about them.
Yeah, like so to be honest, it's an interesting story because the upbringing that I had a lot of moving pieces. So I was actually raised by my grandparents, and the interesting part about that is my grandfather was a minister. So I actually got to travel a lot with him, which was really nice from an early age. But my grandfather, Peter Orasuk, he was actually an addict himself. And he was an addict, and he was a drug addict. You can find his testimony on YouTube. It's been everywhere forever. He's been passed away for a long time now, but he was kind of the first person that I knew in my life that was an addict. But his story is incredible. You can find it, like I said, on YouTube. But moving on from there, I had kind of two sides of my family. I had a, normal, I would say, upbringing for the most part. I lived in rural PEI, so I had a little bit more of a, I guess I was in the sticks or out that way, you could say. But really, anyone on PEI is in the sticks because our main city, Charlottetown, is so small. It's considered a town out here, which is crazy. So
Wow.
I really, to be honest, I grew up, I was an athlete. I played sports. I pretty much played every sport I could growing up. In high school, I played volleyball, basketball. I ran track. I was on the football team. I swam. I really did as much as I could. Once I decided on kind of what my career path was, I actually ended up joining the Canadian military as a reservist. I did some work with them on a kind of a full-time-ish basis within the summer months. So that was, whenever I was right out of high school, pretty much. And then after that, I actually ended up getting onto the football team for the college back on PEI. So I came back, played football. And then as soon as I got my diploma, I specialized in digital media. So I right away was applying for jobs, and lucky enough, I got a job at the Fairmont Chateau Lake Louise.
Wow.
So that was a huge thing for me at the time as I get out of the sun coming through my window. But that was a huge thing for me at the time. So that was the first time I drove across. I guess I would have been 17 or 18 years old.
Wow. And
I packed up a Mazda 6.
Yes.
I had everything I owned at the time. Some of it still is back home, but with one seat in the back, still folded all the way down with a sleeping bag. So I slept in that thing the whole way across. I did it in 3 days, which was crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So it was an experience to see how big the country is. Like it's so big. And then from there, once I got to Lake Louise, I mean, I guess I kind of skipped over the party phase in college, being on a football team. That was a crazy time. Once I got to Lake Louise, it was more of a party phase because it was all staff housing, and it's more, ski people and people who want to be in the Rockies for a summer.
Totally.
A lot of people from Australia, a lot of people from all across the world. It was like very eye-opening. So then I did that, and then I got a job in Ontario. So I drove back through to Ontario. And ended up in Ottawa, and then I went back to PEI, and then I came back out all the way to Calgary.
Wow.
And that's kind of like how I got here. But yeah, it was pretty the biggest question you asked was kind of about the party phase and how I grew up, and having mentioned that, like, PEI is a very interesting place because it's in the summer, it's a party spot because it's warm for the first time in like 9 months. And in the winter though, it's, you're just going to the bars. But I was pretty known for the party scene. I would say I was always trying to be out and about, or, at some party. It was kind of almost a thrill for me, because when I grew up and I was young, I was raised in a kind of stricter home.
Right.
And so, which was great. And so many of the outcomes that I'm blessed with today have come from that. But at the point, just like most young men, I had this innate desire to get out and really just let loose. And man, there was a lot of that happening. That's for sure.
Yeah, dude, such a great story. So have you made it to the West Coast of Canada? Have you made it down to Vancouver? Okay. Yeah. Beautiful spot as well, right?
Oh yeah. It's tough being out there because there's that island, there's Vancouver Island, and then PEI. So we just say that they have the second best island in Canada.
Of course. Of course, got to have that rivalry, right? As do we with the Alberta rivalry as well. So you notice the orange that I'm wearing tonight. Time of recording, it's game 1 against of the round 2 there against the Golden Knights tonight. So we'll see how that goes. Man, the party phase. It really paints a picture about, like, how it was for you, this sort of duality of like the discipline with the upbringing, and then letting loose, as I imagine, as sort of like a, whether it's a rebellion or just like a countermeasure or a counterbalance to that, which I think a lot of young folks go through, right?
I dealt with some loss very early on in my life. Like my grandfather, Peter, he passed away when I was around 5, 6 years old.
Wow.
At that point, my father was in Australia. He had come back and we have a great relationship, but at that point that was tough. And then there was, my mother, which I actually didn't mention, she was also an addict. So
Wow.
it was kind of this interesting world of navigating, like how to feel or having all these different issues. And then I think, once I got to that part where I could let loose, that's what I did. I legitimately just let loose.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Now that you have, like the 3 months to reflect back on just on your drinking career up to this point, you know what I mean? What it, like we're saying, like never say never, but you've paused it for now. What kind of reflections do you have on that sort of thing? How, like we've talked about, like the some of the mental health benefits as far as less anxious, you feeling more calm. How about like some of these potential, like old patterns that you used to have, or these emotions that you used to numb out that are certainly have surfaced over the last 3 months? What's changed about that? Like, I guess, more emotionally for you.
Yeah, I think it's been easier to navigate a lot of feelings. When I say like the point of mental clarity, which a lot of people don't surprisingly understand what I mean when I say that. And I feel like booze or alcohol is a cloud in the way of that mental clarity. And now I feel like I have a lot more. Like I caught myself just the other day, I was sitting on my couch, I came home and my girlfriend walked in and she asked me what I was doing. And I said, I am just extraordinarily thankful. And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, I'm thankful for, you, my family, my job. Like I listed off all these things that I hadn't really thought of before and just was very appreciative. But
nice.
I mean, that's like when I look back now on like how I used to consume or what my habits were. Like I was a very social drinker. So anytime that there was the opportunity and it was a social setting, I had no problem with it. But it was more the realization from February till now of like, wow, like social, sure, like you can say social, but social would also include hockey games, football games, maybe going to the movies, like wherever it was okay to have a beer, I was having a beer.
Right.
And so now I'm just like, oh my goodness, like that's like too much. So it's like in my, like having more clarity to like realize that goes back to like doing all these firsts. Like I'm set to go to a friend of mine's wedding at the end of this month. And that'll be the first wedding that I attend sober. But I've already had one of the other groomsmen, who's a buddy of mine, reach out to me and say, oh, are you going to bring any of the non-alcoholic beers? I said, yeah. He said, I'd love to try some of those because I haven't found a good alternative before. So I'm like, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. That's awesome. That's a really, really good reflection. I love the firsts. Anytime you hear about like sober firsts and all that sort of thing, it's really cool. What do you label yourself as? Like, I'm just kind of curious because, like, that's sort of a thing for now. Like, if people are asking, is it just like, hey, I'm not drinking right now, or hey, like I quit drinking? Like, how do you navigate that? Because for some people, that's like a bit of a button pusher. I'm just curious how it is for you.
Yeah, it's that was something I dealt with very early on because I got a lot of questions like right away.
Right, sure.
I mean, like the first one that came to me was, "Are you an addict?" The second one that came to me is, "Are you dying? Like, is something medically wrong with you?"
Isn't that crazy?
Oh, that was part of the reason I had kind of started originally to decide I'm done with this. But like those were the two big ones. Like,
wow.
And do you know what? Like I said, I have a history. There's a history of addiction within my family on both sides. So it does make sense to me that is an answer or a question that can be asked.
Sure.
But like the answer for me was no. But when I tell, like, people ask and I just say, no, I'm not, like, I'm just not drinking right now. Like I've just decided I'm not. And so I find the word sober is interesting because as soon as you throw the word sober in, you're automatically associated with addiction. Just everyone that I've dealt with, that word is the word that everyone seems to cradle around for having some type of issue. Oh, you're sober for what reason? Whereas I'm just like, I don't have a reason. I'm just not drinking. So I tell people, I'm sober. I'm not drinking. That's just me now. That's what I do.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool. Another question for you that comes up a lot with me, with just various folks that I'm talking about, is like, what is the hardest part about sobriety? And especially early sobriety, one of the most common answers I get is the actual socializing. And you've mentioned that you were a social drinker. So what has been different about this now? And the reason I ask is because you say you have less anxiety. So I'm just kind
Yep.
of curious, like, we're using it as, like, for me, I was a shy kid, so I needed it to quote unquote come out of my shell. I don't
Yep.
get the impression that necessarily was like it for you. So I'm just interested in what your take is on sober socializing now that you've been doing it.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I am like super known as an extrovert. I am like total people all the way, talk. And do you know what? Going back to the kind of my story growing up, I'm lucky because I grew up and was raised by my grandparents who their friends were much older. So I didn't have growing up, like my mom and dad didn't bring over their friends who had kids for me to talk to.
Gotcha.
I
Interesting. Yeah,
I talked to older individuals,
I get it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
so it was
Interesting.
easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but like socializing, it hasn't been a big strain because I have so many options. It comes back
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
non-alcs. I was at a work function yesterday. I work in the auto industry, and I was at a work function, and it was at a bar in Calgary called the Char Bar. And I was like, oh no, I was like, this is going to be one of those moments where, I'm going to get all the questions again, because people are going to be like, oh, why do you have a Diet Coke in your hand?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I get, but I got there, and lucky enough, they had craft 0% beers. Easygoing
Nice.
pale ale was right there. So it was,
Nice.
having that option. And I thanked them. I said, you know what, thanks so much. Like, tell your manager, I said, thank you for having something that, people who aren't drinking or are sober don't have to feel
Yeah.
excluded. Like,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So that's helped a lot.
Yeah. I heard a story from somebody the other day too, where they it was actually the bartender gave them a non-alcoholic beer, and was actually like, hey, so like, how is, there was some curiosity behind it, like, so how
Yeah.
has this been working for you, like what do you like about like drinking versus non-drinking, all that, instead of kind of like, what the traditional, like, what I mean, kind of like, like, one of my friends, I'm not even gonna say it. There's a derogatory term for the non-alcs that my friend has. I can't say it. But like the dismissive
Yep.
nature that can come with it is
Yep.
actually getting replaced, one conversation at a time, with some curiosity, but like, hey, so is that working for you? Which, dude, is amazing, right? Isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Actually, when I was at that work function, a friend of mine, a work colleague, they actually picked up the craft beer that I had, thinking it was a real beer, and they
Nice.
they had it all. And I went up to them and I nudged them. I said, "Oh, you're on the zeros, eh?" And they're like,
Yeah.
"The zeros?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, man, you just had a
Yeah.
non-alc beer with me." And he was
Yeah.
like, "Wow." He was like, "That was
Nice,
really good." And I was
man.
like,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
There we go. Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, super cool, man. Alex, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. It's been really great to get to know you, and looking forward to seeing the continuation of your documentation of the non-alcs, as well as your podcast and all that. So yeah, I guess just I usually wrap things up with a couple things, like where to find you and how to reach out to you. We'll get to that. Yeah, this will be a different take on it, because usually I say if anybody's looking out for help, you know what I mean?
yep,
Well, no, I'll still do it. If somebody's sort of on the fence and kind of going, if I'm not, it's the sober curious thing.
yep."
What can you say from your perspective if somebody's kind of like, I'm just not really sure if this is for me? What can you say about it?
Well, I think, and that's a great way to close. I think from my brief experience, the number one thing that I would tell anyone that's on that pivot point of yes versus no is just do it. The reason is very simple, because if you don't do it now, when's the next time that you'll be sitting at the same point asking yourself if you should?
Mm,
And once you're conscious of an opinion that's formed, it's better to take action now than to
yeah.
let it waste. Because the last thing that I always say is I use this example for life, is I never want to look back in 20 years and wish I had have done it then, because I'll
Yeah.
never have the chance again to experience it. So for me, it was a choice that I made, that I've gotten to meet new people. I've experienced new things. I feel better. I tell people now I look better. My skin looks better, all
Yeah.
that stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
just go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, love it, man. And where can folks find you online? And again, highly recommend give them a follow on Instagram. It's a tremendous account.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, you can. So you can find me at Alex Orasuk on most platforms. The best part about having a last name that's a little funky is you
Yeah.
get to use it everywhere. So Alex Orasuk, Facebook, Instagram. That's where you'll find all kind of the brew content. I will say the 0% content is mostly on the Instagram, and then again the Sub-Zero podcast. If that's something that you're into, it's out on Apple Music, Spotify, pretty much you name it, where you get your podcasts. It's there. I'm looking to upload video at some point. I have started that, so hopefully YouTube soon, but we're gonna see. Thanks for having me though. It's
Yeah,
great.
man. Great to have you on. And I can tell this is just the tip of the iceberg here. You and we'll be doing some collaborations in the future for sure. So dude,
Big
I
time.
appreciate you coming on. Thanks, man.
No worries.